Thinking of starting a business and not sure where to start? Well, watch on. As a business accountant, my team and I spend all day long helping business owners on their journey. And of course, that journey has to start somewhere, so we get involved a lot with early stage businesses as well as those that are looking to grow and move onwards. And of course, there's a lot of chat online and other things we get involved with looking at what to do at the start. And I think a lot of people, we have a lot of conversations with owners around, what does it take to get going and their own struggles. And we've learned quite a few things from that. So I wanted to share in this video some sort of basics of like, if you're thinking of starting a business, what's the kind of practical steps that you've got to go through to just get going? And that's what I want to cover here. So before I do, if you like these type of videos, make sure to click the subscribe button below so you get notified whenever we release more videos just like this one. And of course, click the bell. So I'm going to start off with a pretty obvious thing for an accountant to say, and that's that you should have a plan. And I don't mean some giant business plan, because you'll hear loads of successful business owners who have done podcasts and interviews who will tell you they never had a plan. But what we do see is that the success rate in the UK for a business making itself past the 5-year point is only about half people ever get there. Half of businesses only get to that 5-year point. And what we see from our experience is that those that have based their sort of business model on a bit of a plan have a much better chance of getting there. So I'm not talking about deep, massive spreadsheets, but a spreadsheet can be quite handy. But even if you're not a spreadsheet person, if you can just start off with a bit of what I call fag packet maths, just like, a bit of paper, what does it cost to produce the thing you're going to do? What's the actual profit? So a lot of people look at like the top line figures and think, oh yeah, that's really good. I can take in like £1,000 a month. But by the time you've deducted the cost of supplying the service, so I'll use baking as a good example for this. You see a lot of people start up small home bakeries, and actually it's quite difficult to make big margins on those, big profits, because there's all the costs that are involved with doing it, plus then you think about the amount of time you've put into it and all the rest of it. So really have a good think about it. Obviously do a lot of research around your sector. I'm not talking too much about that today, because I presumed if you're going to start a business, you'd have done a load of Googling, talked to some people, if it's a newish product, gone and done some sort of market research around your mates and your family. Would you buy this? How much would you spend? And all the rest of it. So you've done your Googling and your research on the product, but then just have a bit of a plan. And if you want to help with a bit of a spreadsheet format, if you just Google Heelan Cashflow Basics, there's a blog that we did talking about Cashflow forecast, which is a posh word for a spreadsheet that shows what your bank balance is at the end of each month. And there's a template there, you can just download it, it's free, there's no barrier in terms of putting your email in or anything like that. It's just a really simple spreadsheet there to download, and that might help you just plan it out and have a look at that and think about your numbers. So think about, does it make any money? What would that look like? And how much income do I need to survive? So you've got to kind of plan that it's going to take longer than you think. That's definitely our experience. It's going to take longer than you think to get the clients and customers that you want, and therefore it's going to take longer to get money in the bank. How much money do you need to bankroll it to begin with to get to the point where it can survive? And if you're thinking of doing this full-time and quitting your main job, please, please, please just work out what your survival income needs to be and how long you can go without any money, because that's the biggest thing we see where business failures is the amount of people that just stop doing them and go back into employment because they just can't make the numbers work. So plan, that'll be the first one. The second one is define your offering. I know that sounds odd, but you've all probably been there, right? You've been to a family wedding and you don't know somebody and you politely ask what they do and they say, oh, well, I'm a change analyst in, something, or I'm in L&D, and you're like, what's L&D? And there's all these acronyms and things that go on. So it's understanding what your offering is. Who do you help? How's it going to benefit them working with you? And how much does it cost? These type of things. I've been to so many networking dues with startups and they can't tell you really clearly who they help and what they do. So you as a person, they're looking to either sell to you, or they're looking maybe for the people which is one of the bigger powers of networking. They want to know, who do you know, but you don't know who they serve. So it's really understanding that, and you would have heard the term 60-second pitch, but it's like, can you explain to somebody in sort of 60 seconds who you help, what you do? Simple as that. And then from your point of view, when somebody says, yeah, actually, I am interested in that, I have got that problem, I would like some help, can you say, yeah, this is how we help you and this is how much it costs, clearly? Because that's the other step we see quite often, is people just haven't quite formalized that. So spend some time doing your numbers, thinking about your product, and just being able to explain that to anybody that asks. So define your offering, that would be point 2. Then again, bit of a tax one, but try and think about from a practical, because that's where I want to stick with this practical point. How are you going to trade? Are you going to be a limited company? You're going to be a sole trader? You're going to be a partnership? How does that look? Sole traders and partnerships from a tax point of view are very similar. A limited company is this separate thing on its own. And actually, if you go to the YouTube channel, there's tons of videos on whether you should be a limited company and things like this. But what I would say to you, and if you've listened to me talk about this subject a lot, please decide first whether you actually need to be a limited company. Because if you're really just testing the water with this and there's no actual reason why you need to be, you really should consider whether you need to form one. Because limited companies basically come with a cost, and that cost is that nearly always you're going to want an accountant to do the accounts and the year end. end. It's not the same with sole traders because you can just log on to the Revenue's website and use their free tool. Now there is kind of some free tools with the limiteds, but they're very difficult to operate. You still got to have accounting knowledge to do the accounts, and it's just a different thing. Whereas there's no accounts required for a personal tax return. It's actually a form, albeit a complicated form, but you can definitely do it. So consider whether you need that limited company, but sometimes you're forced into it. Sometimes your main client that you work with might be like, no, I need you to be limited because we're worried about tax liability, or you're doing something fairly risky and you want the limited liability, as it's known, of the limited company. That means kind of if anything went wrong, your house isn't up for grabs, these kind of things. So just bear that in mind, that there might be reasons why you want a limited company, but do consider whether it's actually needed if that's not the case. So then we've talked about money a lot. Let's talk about the other key practical point, and that is how can you get paid? So a lot of people, they've started this, they know what their offer is, they've done their plan, they've formed their limited company, or they've registered for their sole trader. Now, and we'll talk about tax in a minute, but then it's like, okay, well, how do I get paid? What's the tech that's required? Does somebody buy my product from like Amazon? Fine, you know what that is, but do I need a PayPal account? Does that PayPal account need to be linked to a bank account? What type of bank account do I need? Do I need personal? Do I need business? All I'd say from you from a tax perspective, if you've got a limited company, you'll want to do bank account anyway. It needs one in its own name. If you're a sole trader or a partnership, really any account will do. The banks will disagree. They'll say you need a business account, but from a tax point of view and a records point of view, all we care about is having a clean bank account that you can see the transactions going in and out. So nice, no sort of non-business transactions, nice and clean. It's much easier from a record point of view. And we'll talk about records in a minute. But yeah, so you might want a bank account. You've got to think if you're going to invoice, let's say you're a consultant and you send your bills out, how are you going to invoice? Do you want some accounting software, which we'll talk about in a minute? Are you going to type an invoice up on Word? Does somebody have to buy this automated? If so, what's the kind of tech stack to get through? So all those kind of things. Do you need Go Cardless? Do you need PayPal? Do you need a little card Zettel reader to go with your phone to take card payments? All those kind of things, but getting paid is pretty important, so sort that out. That's the other practical point. And then we mentioned it, you need to keep good records, mainly for tax, but also for your own benefits. So you can see, are you actually making any money? And right now, surprise, surprise, I'm going to recommend to you that you go and you get some accounting software. If you're a sole trader, it's not essential right now, but from April 2024, at the time of recording this video, you were going to have to submit quarterly digital tax returns in software, and currently there's no free provided by the government software. There are software providers trying to create sort of a semi-free solution, but at the moment you would have to be there. So you might as well get in now and get used to using those kind of software. For me, the two that I would always choose is Xero and QuickBooks. They're the market leaders and they've got great products. You can see more. We've done comparisons and some things on the YouTube channel, so go check those out for some thoughts, but ultimately that's what I would be in. And you need to get used to using them, and there is that barrier to it. That said, if you're a sole trader right now and you really don't want to get involved with that, just think about how you're going to keep it. You've got your nice separate clean bank account we just spoke about, but how else are you going to keep your records? Are you going to put them all in a digital format? Is it all going to be a paper format? Is it going to be a file? Is it going to be a spreadsheet? However you're going to do it, you're going to need to be able to add up those numbers to put them on the tax forms, and that's the key from them. They've got to be clear. So if the revenue ever wanted to look at it, you could sort of show them it and they could see where you come up with those numbers. So record keeping is quite important. So, and the reason I mentioned that at the beginning is it's really bad to try and put it all together later. It's much better to do it regularly, especially that's why I like accounting software, because it kind of, you've got the subscription going out every month, you might as well keep up to date. You can do it daily sometimes. It doesn't take 5 minutes then if you've got all the right setup. So keep good records, and that is also the number one way to save tax, as a side note, is because you don't want to miss any tax deductions. Make sure you capture all your expenditure, so keep good records. And then we mentioned tax. You need to think if you need to register any taxes. Now the key takeaways to this is that if you've got a limited company, you're going to trade all year, and then you get 9 months and a day before you've got to worry about paying the tax. And actually your accounts don't have to be filed to about that sort of time as well. So you've got quite a long way to think about it. But if I was doing a limited company, I'll just cut it short and say I would speak to an accountant as soon as you can, either before or after forming that company. So you've got an idea of your responsibilities and how it's all going to work, and how they're best going to work, what's their recommendation for keeping records. Because if you're in a limited company, I'm almost sure for most accountants they're going to want you in a digital solution, because there's effectively, without going too deep into the reasons, there's more of a need to produce accounts and full accounts, and accounting software will help you do that. Just having a digital box of stuff is going to cost you more money with the accountant to go and get that done. So do that early. That will help you plan and give you plenty of time. And these accounts and corporation tax returns for a company, they're not a quick thing to produce. So the accountant's going to need quite a bit of time to sort that out as well. So please don't leave it. We get plenty of calls every day where someone's like, oh, my accounts are due next week. Can you do it? We're like, no, there's just no way. There's too many things to do to get that sorted. So do it in good time. Now, if you're a sole trader, or a partnership, similar idea. You'll think your tax year from April to April, 6th of April for most people to the 5th of April the next year. Depending where you are where you start your business, and you're going to go round until the 5th of April, and then you've got the same thing. You've got kind of 9 months to pay. The 31st of January most years is every year in fact, the 31st of January every year is the deadline to which you've got to pay your tax and normally submit your tax return. But of course, they're both linked. The deadline for your tax return and the deadline to pay the tax. So you don't want to wait to the last minute because you don't know what your tax bill is. Well, when you do your tax return, they give you the tax bill. So you want to do that nice and promptly. But again, keeping good records is going to help you fill that form out shortly after April, so you get the maximum amount of time to plan for that tax bill. So there we go. So again, register for tax. Now, with a company, when you form the company, they automatically register you with Revenue and Customs. Normally, they get that wrong, and you might have to adjust the dates on the tax returns. If you're working with an accountant, they'll normally sort that out for you. If you're a sole trader, you should register personally, and there's a video on our YouTube channel on how to do this, or at least gives you guidance. It might be a little bit out of date at the time of recording, but it will show you the main steps to do. And you need to do that as soon as you start trading, or as soon as possible, to get you registered and get going. And finally, the most important one. So you've got all these things in place. You know how you're going to get paid. You know your plan works. You're registered for tax where you need to be. You've decided kind of how you're going to trade. You know how you're keeping your records. You need to go and get going. And this is one of the hardest ones. People spend ages developing websites and click funnels and beautiful marketing campaigns, everything else, and they just don't go out quick enough and start telling people about their business. And all this time they might be incurring costs on software subscriptions, accountants, phone bills, all these things. Get out there, tell people, you just need a basic website or a business card or whatever, depending on how you're going to get your customers, and just get out there and start trying things. Your product is forever going to be a work in progress. The same with your services. You're going to want to constantly tweak them based on the market, based on feedback, based on opportunities. It's never going to end. So just get out there, launch it. Doesn't matter if it's not quite perfect yet, and get going. And that's the biggest thing we see. Is we see a lot of new businesses come to us and they start incurring costs, both with us and everything else they've got going on, and just don't sell anything to anybody. And it's the biggest thing. So, and if you're worried about that, if you've not got a business that's like online and you're just selling product, then go get yourself some business books, go seek out some sales training. All these kind of things are really good investments for getting that confidence you need to go and sell. And selling has a dirty kind of word to it for a lot of people, but honestly, it's really important. You can't do business without it, but it really doesn't have to be. You can do it in beautiful ways that just feels natural to everybody. So get going. Don't hesitate. And that's it. They're the kind of major practical points to starting your business and getting you going. I mean, we could spend hours filming a video talking about this in big detail, but I just wanted to cover kind of the main practical points that I think need to be done to get you just on that journey. If you want a side hustle or something like that, this will get you going and get you hopefully bringing in that money. So that's it. Please do share this with anybody that you think needs to know this information, and I'll see you in the next one.